Good morning. Our opening reading today is called Commitment. People say, what is the sense of our small effort? They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples and spreads in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do. This is from Dorothy Day.
Hand me the mic. Good morning. I'm Gary Harrison. I'm with All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church in Colorado Springs, original home of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho nations. I am a white heterosexual male, reddish complexion, light-colored hair. I'm in my early 70s, medium build. I'm wearing a brightly colored Hawaiian shirt, tan pants, blue-rimmed glasses. My preferred pronouns are he and his. That was the format that all the presenters at GA were asked to use, of course, describing themselves, primarily for those who are visually impaired. So other than just hear a voice, they were able to imagine what that speaker was like. Pretty cool. I'm going to do a quick overview of the General Assembly and a little bit about Pittsburgh. I was an attendee, I'm not a delegate, so Bruce, Joan, and Becky are going to explain the business side of GA. I want to give a little more visual impression to GA. I've never been there before, and the slideshow that's on now is a composition of photographs that Beth and I took. It's self-explanatory, so I'm not going to describe any of them other than the picture of Elvis. Elvis was not at GA, I don't think, but he was at the Andy Warhol Museum, and so Sandra asked that we include the picture of Elvis in the slideshow, so you'll see him shortly. The GA was held at the David Lawrence Convention Center in Pittsburgh, a very contemporary, LEED Gold certified convention center, lots of daylight, lots of roof gardens, which you'll see shortly. According to my notes, there were about 1,100 attendees, both in person and virtual, of which 600 were delegates. A typical day started at 12:30 and ran to 2 o'clock for the workshops, so 90-minute workshops every day. And then the General Assembly sessions would start at 2:30 and run to 5:30 with a whole 10-minute break, which got to be a bit tedious. Interestingly, there was minimal security. There was no police presence. They made a very important point of that. I saw one security guard in the 5 days we were there. The only requirement was when you went into the convention center, you had a mask and a badge, like Joan has, and I forgot mine. Other than that, it was quite an interesting experience. The presentations were very high-tech, very well done. A few minor glitches, but as you can imagine, you got that many people virtual as well as in person. Excellent presenters and musicians, really good. Good speeches by our past president, Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray, and our new president, Reverend Dr. Sophia Bentoncourt, who will be the president for the next 6 years. And Becky, did you sign up for 6 years as president? No. Can you imagine 6 years with being ahead of the UU? Anyway, great leadership. Quite a diverse group of UUs, as you can imagine. They're from different organizations within the UU, from all over the US and I think some other countries, all different sizes of people, sexual preferences, ages, colors. There were people there with green and blue hair, so it was quite a diverse group. Since this is my 5 minutes to talk about the GA, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on Pittsburgh, which I found to be a fascinating city. A few factoids. Pittsburgh is spelled with an H at the end. Wasn't always the case. It's ended at G, but now it's back to H. You can Google to find out why. Pittsburgh was known as the Steel City, the city of bridges. There's 446 different bridges. Gateway to the West in the 1800s and Smoke City in the 1900s. One of the things I learned, maybe most importantly, is how to pronounce Monongahela, which is one of the primary rivers, the three rivers. That combines with the Allegheny and becomes the Ohio River. The Ohio River flows to the southwest, touching 5 different states until it comes to Cairo, Illinois, spelled Cairo, where it connects with the Mississippi. The point of all this being, for generations, for decades, for centuries, people in Pittsburgh area could connect with the outer world through the rivers. And again, for generations, they imported and exported goods, ore, coke, coal, steel, aluminum, and glass out of Pittsburgh. And it was quite an industrial city for a long, long time. This all ended in the 1970s and 80s with the collapse of the steel industry. And tens of thousands of workers in that whole region lost their jobs. It was a true crisis. Pittsburgh reinvented itself and is now a very high-tech city, higher education, health center. But the mill towns along the rivers disappeared. They're gone forever. Lastly, I want to talk about one of the workshops I attended, which was stewardship, primarily about fundraising. And I was really encouraged of all the ideas that were floated out there. We're doing almost all of them. So Stan, good work. Annual fund drives, kickoff dinners, month-long campaigns. Everybody's back to post-pandemic service auctions. And using multiple ways to pay your pledge, through text, breeze, direct deposit, auto payments. So we're on top of it, we really are. A couple quick little things. They emphasize the importance of collection plates because a lot of congregations are getting rid of it. They think it's too traditional, but the presenters said, keep the collection plates. People like giving money that way. The other thing is those collections are shared with other organizations. Of the workshop I was in, there were probably 100 people. 90 of those, their congregations shared the collection plates. So I think it's something that we should think about. Thank you. Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky Harrison, and I was a delegate at GA. GA stands for General Assembly. I think we probably need to help our new and recent comers. GA's General Assembly. UUA is Unitarian Universalist Association. I'm here to talk about the Article 2 revisions, which I gave a workshop on in early June on a Tuesday evening. It took an hour. I don't have an hour. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give you the specifics. I'm going to give you a little taste of it at the end. What I am going to do is present the rationale and the history behind why we revise our principles, which is what an awful lot of GA was involved in this particular year. I've heard people say things like, but I like our principles. Why can't we keep them the same? I'm confused. This is scary. My all-time favorite? But we just finished our 7 banners. Please remember and keep in mind a mental image of the Ohio River that Gary described. It has many, many tributaries. The confluence, and this is thanks to Kat, our tremendous administrator, for clearing me up on a small confusion between confluence and convergence. A confluence is important. It now can mean not just confluence of water, but of ideas, cultures, and great things can come from a confluence. It was perfect that Pittsburgh was where GA was this year. Please keep a river in mind, flowing down the hill, having different things added to it as it travels into greatness. You need a history lesson to understand why this is going on. 1961 was when the UUA was formed. We're kind of late to the game in terms of denominational status. 2 faith systems, Unitarian, Universalism, joined together and created some principles. And I'm going to have Rick point that out, and you're going to look at that, and we're going to leave it up there for a while because I bet you haven't ever seen this. This is courtesy of Joan. Joan did the research and created the slide for me. and I did the editing in red for this presentation. This was 1961, the beginning of the 60s, so transport yourself back there. What was happening in the 60s and the 70s and half of the 80s, which is the next time we changed our principles? In case you've forgotten, or you weren't alive, Vietnam War, civil rights protests, the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Watergate, the energy crisis, the voting age was lowered to 18, we got the first man on the moon, and Roe v. Wade came into existence. It was a busy social time. And at that time, in 1985, the UUA decided, hey, we need to review this and change it because it doesn't fit anymore. And so they did. And they had long discussions into the night, and they ended up coming up with our next slide, which are the principles that we have long known for how many years? Almost 40. 40. It took the UUA 25 years to decide to change them the second time. We're now looking at 40 years, and the UUA is deciding, you know, maybe we need to switch them again. We need to update them. We need to revise them. So now, history review again. This is an old teacher on board. You're stuck. Next slide, please. So look at it again really quickly so you can see what I have told you, so you might remember it better. Okay? Now, what has happened since 1985? Have you changed? Has the world changed? Has our church changed? One of the things we did was that in 2002, oh my gosh, 2002, we changed our name from All Souls Unitarian Church to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, a sign of accepting the combination of our faith that was back in 1961, 62. Thank you, Beth. So that wasn't bad, but look at the rest of the things. What else is up on that screen? Oh, you can't read it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so they changed the font. Okay, what happened there was that we had things like Black Lives Matters. We've had it is now normal to be rude and crude and threatening. We now have daily mass shootings in our schools and country, not once every couple of years, every day. And we have our societal advances that we've been making, they are getting crushed. So if we needed to change our principles in 1985, I think we need to change them in 2024. So to have you look at this very quickly, you're going to have all of this year to look at the new principles and mess with them and decide with them. And the delegates at 2024 will determine whether they are adopted or not. The bylaws of the UUA require that we review them at least once every 15 years. We're a little behind the game. Or maybe we did review them and didn't do anything with them. So that is what is going on. Now, very quickly, the next slide. Grab something. That's one of the proposals. And the very last sentence is a direct sentence taken from the report. This report has been going on for 2.5, close to 3 years now. Back in 2020, the UUA board said, the article, the commission study, you got a job to do. Rewrite. They did. 500 amendments from congregations all over, wrapped down to 15 amendments that we voted on this GA. And now we have a year to think about it. And then delegates of next year's, which will be an online convention only, will vote. This is what they're proposing, and it looks like a huge, huge change. Love is in the center. We no longer have a list of things. We have 6 equally valuable values. They rub into each other, they drip on each other, just kind of like a bunch of kids. But they are all extremely important and equally important. Many people noticed a lot of similarities, so don't let this completely different look scare you. Next and last slide, please. My daughter Kate and I, when we were working up this presentation for last June, noticed there were so many common phrases. So we called it the migration of the principal concepts into values. And if you look, you'll see that the first, the third, the fourth, the seventh, the first, the third, the fourth, thank you, the sixth, and the fifth values have very similar wording. 6, generosity, the sixth one we couldn't find. And generosity is completely new. So whatever we do, this is something that we can work on and present and get you guys familiar with, so you can make an intelligent decision in a year about our principles. Thank you.
And that also is why there's no problem with the banners. There's a plan. They will get refurbished, repurposed. Hi, I'm Joan Hofer, and I was a delegate. And I would like to cover the role the young UUs played during the GA, because there was a group of young adults, and they were very visible and very, they had an important message to share. They were there to promote a yes vote on the business resolution, which was the complete divestment from the fossil fuel industry and subsequent reparations. So during the presentation of pros for this resolution, these young adults shared their personal experiences of boots on the ground at the Stop Line 3 protests in Minnesota. Individuals described being tear gassed, and one gentleman reported having received a concussion at the hands of the authorities, who were paid by the company invested in building this pipeline. The cons were offered by the UUA administration, who reported on the potential financial risks that could result in divesting. Following the pros and cons, the youth got up en masse with signs and chants to emphasize their position. Although probably not appropriate protocol, they did it in an orderly manner, and they retreated once their statement was complete. It left an impression on me. The results the following day were no's 68.3% and yes with 31.7%. On a personal note, I had an opportunity to engage with one young man regarding all of this, and he expressed to me his frustration, stating that the UUA has had decades to divest from fossil fuels, and that UUs always say that the youth are the future, but we don't back them up. I promised him that I would be sure to share all of this with you. And so it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bruce Leeson, and I also was a delegate. And let me just suggest that, actually, we're doing this backwards. Is that all right? Okay. We're doing this backwards. Really, we should have had meetings, discussions, exchange of ideas, so that the delegates actually go as delegates and represent the congregation, as opposed to, hopefully we all have good hearts and clear minds and we vote our conscience. But that's probably not the job of a delegate. So, been talking about a change of the principles, essentially, Article 2. That's a process that takes years, right? And that kind of crawls. But little by little, we're going to come to a consensus, and it'll be kind of neat. But there are some things that require more immediate attention, right? And so we see every GA, every GA results in identification of what are called actions of immediate witness. These tend to be things that are immediate, need to be addressed, and need to see some sort of action or commitment. And there are probably dozens of things we could name, but UUs do have a process, all right? People submit a proposed action for immediate witness, and this is actually represents a real change. Used to be when you got to GA, people were running around with petitions, and they had to get 150 names or something like that in a petition in order to present their action for immediate witness. Now it's much more orderly, organized, and hopefully involving multiple members of the congregation that sponsors it. Then the Social Justice Committee whittles down a number, all right? And then the delegates vote on that number and select, this year it was three AIWs. So of the 6 that were presented, the ones that didn't make the cut were to look at climate impacts of military emissions, called to embrace goals and provisions of a treaty to prohibit all nuclear weapons. Nice idea. I don't know if that would work. And not in our watch, opposing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. All right? But 98% of the excuse me, 98% of the delegates voted to support the Dreamers. This AIW expresses UUA support for the Dreamers and calls on Congress to pass legislation giving them a pathway to permanent residence. Also calls on UUs to support Dreamers in their communities and contact members of the congregation. All right, so almost every delegate signed up to that. 98% is a huge number. All right, almost 86% wanted to see organizing for health equity, all right, given attacks on abortion rights, gender-affirming care, and care for the old, all right, and people discussing, yeah, maybe we'll eliminate Medicare, privatize it or something. So the delegates endorsed the Organizing for Health Equity. And 84% said, yes, we need to stand up to stop Cop City. Cop City is a big training facility being proposed, probably be built in Atlanta. It's going to be, they're going to take down 381 acres of forest land that is on a site deemed sacred by the Muskogee Indians, who lived there before we stole their land, and and it's going to be, at least the writers of the AIW said that they're also going to be training cops in militarized activities. I don't know if that's true, but most people voted to stop Cop City, all right? So, there were 3 AIWs from probably dozens proposed. Put them down by the committee, then the delegates select the ones that are going to actually be sponsored and going to be a part of UUA commitment for this next year, right? I'd also like to give a little plug off script for going to GA. I'm kind of disappointed that next year it's going to be all virtual. I suppose that's a good thing in terms of environmental impact and just progress and having lots of people involved. But I think going to GA is a great place to meet old friends from congregations I've been in the past. Right? I saw 2 very dear friends from that I met in Augusta, Georgia, when he was the minister there. We did a year of separation and then reconnected, and I saw he and his wife. They're now living in Houston with the grandchildren. It was wonderful. Friend from Kansas City, Reverend Danielle DeBono, actually gave the benediction and opening meditation in the last service. So it's a great opportunity, and it's fun, and everybody should see 1,000 UUs all in one place. It's real easy to get the idea that, gee, there are less than 100 of us. But it's a big deal. Go to GA if you can. Participate in workshops beforehand so the delegates really are delegates, not just good people voting their conscience.